Hey, this is Scott Townsend, and today I'm joined by Nick Sdoucos. Nick Sdoucos is the creative director and account executive with Plexus Productions. He's been in the event management business for 30 years, and clients include Citi and Dell and Clinton Global, Sage. There's Pandora Jewelry. Who else is on there?
There's been a bunch. I've been fortunate enough to not all my clients, but there's been fortunate enough to work with a whole bunch of different groups at one point or another.
So thanks a lot for joining us, Nick. How's everything going?
Everything's going good. Good. Yeah. And you?
Good.
You guys are hanging in there?
Yep. You know, this, okay, so here we are. It's 12 weeks later, and at the 1st of January, if you would have told me that oil prices were going to be sub-zero and that the nation's economy was going to be shut down, I would have told you that that's never going to happen. And it all happened. So in the business, the event management business, looking into the future, tell me, what do you see?
Maybe not so much as there was maybe initially like 3 months ago, but there's a lot of people that are running around saying, "Oh, people are never going to go back to live events. It'll never be the same. It'll, never." And I don't remember a time in history where that sort of definitive statement of "we'll never do this again" has ever sort of played out.
Right.
I think the most recent example, if we can think back to after September 11th. I mean, what was the number one thing that everybody was saying? "Oh, I'm never going back in an airplane again," right? And I think by human nature, it's just like and I don't mean this in a bad way, but there's a bit of a herd mentality, is that once some people start doing it, then more people start doing it, and then it just sort of becomes comfortable again, and then we sort of allow ourselves to sort of get back into the swing of things.
Yeah, we have short memories.
Yeah, and I think very much the same will ring true for the events industry. I think on our side, we're seeing signs of that. I can say most notably, I remember, just a couple of months ago when this happened, the sort of all of our clients went through this cycle where it started off being everybody was going to be remote. You're going to have remote presenters. We're going to do all this stuff in a virtual environment, and we very quickly progressed through that. I think we may have actually gotten like one actual event done where sort of everything was like legitimately remote. And the event planning side of it, they sort of, as they learned more about virtual events and everything that's sort of going on and what goes into them, we very quickly moved from everybody being remote to getting as many people studio side as possible, and sort of reinventing the wheel, so to speak, and
Right.
and making things a little bit less complicated. And going back to what I was saying before, I think those are kind of like the steps that we sort of slowly start progressing through. I'm already seeing signs now of I know there's a couple of big expos that are already saying that they're planning on full like attendance, an actual live setup. So I think right now people are sort of projecting out in the future. I know there's been a tremendous amount of sort of shock in terms of, you would know, like it just people sort of trying to reorient their budgets and whatnot and trying to figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely the theme that right now that seems to be most pervasive is that maximizing as much of the togetherness as possible in the actual production of a virtual event.
Let me ask you this. What about the contracts, force majeure or majeure, however you want to say that? I never paid attention much to force majeure. They're always talking about government shutdowns or wars and
riots,
stuff like that.
Famine,
Locusts,
riots, famine, locusts, that kind of thing. Yeah, whoever pays attention to any of that stuff.
And so that's probably the first thing everybody's going to look at now.
Yeah, so it's I know a lot. Let's see, on with a lot of our clients, one of the things I've noticed is there was when this sort of started, there was a big rush to find people that could sort of service a lot of like the virtual events. I think the biggest sort of exclusionary factor that sort of came in is that they were looking for people or groups or organizations that had already been sort of doing it already, rather than because I know a lot of companies had to sort of pivot really quick and try and survive as best they can. But one of the things I noticed in sort of in reference to that is that we had that initial flux that sort of came in, which is a lot of it was like educational. How does this work? What are some of the things you can do? What are our limitations? So on and so on,
Right, educational,
so on and so forth. Yeah, and then what happened after that is then we went through a round of a bunch of a lot of RFPs and stuff like that, and then sort of a lot of people went silent, and then when we reconnected with a lot of them, it was a very, very similar storyline. And that was that they were trying to figure out internally, manage their own sort of force majeure issues in some of their contracts. On their side, the event is still the event. So everything's sort of still being pulled from the same bucket that sort of existed. So they had to figure out their cancellation clauses with their hotels, airlines, facility management contracts,
right?
On-site physical AV and all of that kind of stuff. So it, you essentially had sort of two different, you have these like sort of two different groups working like in some of our clients, one trying to solve one problem, the other and trying to sort of solve the other, and then they're sort of returning in the middle to sort of meet and discuss what they wanted to do. And now a lot of that stuff has sort of gotten sorted out. I know there's been, I mean, your probably clients obviously know way better than me, but I'm sure there's been negotiations and forgiveness and stuff like that. And there's sort of a thought process too, is also to decide whether or not do we postpone and sort of move things forward, or
Right.
do we go ahead with the virtual event? And that posed another challenge too, which was, for a lot of companies, it's like, especially in not even some of I mean, same thing with some of these private events, but in the public events is, you had to take a real hard look at this and say, hey, if we postpone, are we going to sort of cannibalize what we're going to do next year? Obviously with a public event, sort of like live ticket sales and all that kind of stuff, like concerts, it's a big deal. You got a little bit more control over it, obviously with on the private side, but now does your budget sort of roll over into your next fiscal year and all of those kinds of things. So there's a lot, I think, that on the client side that they had to go through like quite rapidly in the last couple of months. Now we're starting to see a lot of like confirmations and stuff are coming in. I know a lot of the bandwidth is sort of getting sucked up, because there's only like there's only so many companies and stuff like that that can like sort of legitimately handle the stuff, and there's a tremendous amount of like hand-holding that goes along with it because there's a fear of the unknown. Nobody wants to leave anything on the table in their event.
Right.
So to be able to sort of, once that sort of floodgate now is starting to open and everybody's starting to confirm stuff, we've had 4 or 5 things confirmed just in the last week or so, and it seems like everybody's doing the same exact thing. It's all of the stuff that's sort of canceled in that time block has now sort of been moved and dropped right into the same time frame. So it seems like there's going to be a giant run on virtual events like from the time period of late
Right.
August, September, and October.
What do you think about health and safety in the future? I mean, are we going to be shaking? Will people ever shake hands again? I mean, I know they will, but what does the health and safety of the attendees look like now? Are booths going to be separated 6-8 feet apart? Is floor space going to be expanded? How do you see that looking?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. My view on, well, to answer your first question, and that sort of goes back to my line of thinking, whether you subscribe to it or not, it's look, are we ever going to shake hands again? Yes, we're going to shake hands again. Yes, we're going to hug. Yeah, I mean that's what human beings are. And there's always going to be people that say, no, I'm never doing that, and that's fine, and that's everybody's choice. But I think again, once somebody comes out and says, we have a vaccine, right? And they've gone through their trials and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, somebody's going to turn on a spigot. I mean, for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's 80, even if you're holding 50% of the population right now at bay, and 80% of that comes back, that's going to be a massive flood. You're still always going to have that 10, 20% that's sort of going to have to work your way 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, that sort of back down till you get back to the people that, that wore a mask when we flew on the planes before. And there will always, that's never going to change. To your other point, it's I wish, other companies, not even companies, but other industries, right? And are sort of writing the rules as we speak, written the rules already. Case in point, like grocery stores immediately sort of jumped on this, but because they had to, they didn't have a choice, right? Walgreens, CVS, Best Buy, Costco, like, they had to quickly implement stuff. Otherwise they died. With live events, it wasn't like an immediate need, like you have to go to the grocery store. So there's sort of like this interesting example of kind of getting to sort of this long circuitous way of sort of answering what you're talking about. There was that interview that Anderson Cooper was doing with the mayor of Las Vegas a while back, and he was asking the question about the casino, right? Going about the casino, and the answer really should have been, yes, we need to open the casinos because they provide jobs and whatever. And okay, great, it's a casino. You may not like to hear the word casino, but whatever. It's
right.
They provide jobs. But the answer should have been, is we're working right now to put policies and procedures in that, just like grocery stores, just like everybody else, we're rethinking the way to do that. And then we'll open those things. And that very much has to happen in our industry. I mean, the casino example is not very far off from what we're doing. So, I know some quietly, some companies and stuff have sort of dabble in this. But it would be great. I really, really think that if some leaders in our industry really, and it sort of sounds funny that, we're sort of having this conversation, I guess, because why not us? Could be anybody, but some leaders in the industry, but I mean, some big time heavy hitters and stuff like that, and some of the, the high up places. Really, I think for the event, sports and entertainment. I mean, we can throw everything sort of into that sports and entertainment category. Should sort of get together and just lay out some basic plans just for events and stuff in general. I think if you're looking on the front side of the vaccine, yes, the policies and procedures have to be in place. I know we're looking at stuff, like we're actively doing stuff now where, like if we're bringing people into a studio to do stuff for virtual events, we have policies and procedures in place, like everything from sort of hand sanitizer, people, limiting the amount of people on set, breaking things up into shifts, where the crew and stuff is not on this at the same time, but that the client is there, and then sort of minimizing staff for, what we actually need to operate, doing things like robotic cameras rather than, like actual sort of like handheld cameras and, using camera ops. Unfortunately for those guys, doing like remote studio trucks, like things like that, wherever possible, to sort of limit that, just to have that sort of on the forefront of everybody's mind. But then getting into the exhibit, thing, I think it's really just, it may eventually sort of solve itself because nobody may want to take that large of a risk on the front side of a vaccine. But although, we spoke earlier that there are some people that are planning to go ahead, but they're so far off that the assumption is that they're going to be post-vaccine. But if we were to theoretically have a conversation about, a trade show that's pre-vaccine, yeah, I mean, it's, now you got to look at things like, yeah, listen, Home Depot, you try to go Home Depot right now, and it's like there's a dude out there with a counter and a security guard, and it's like there are only so many people that are allowed in the space, and you got to wear masks, and you have to sort of socially distance yourself. So it's
only go one way down an aisle.
Right. Yeah. And those are things that our industry is going to have to absorb. I don't think they'll stick around post-vaccine. I think that's everybody's sort of going to let that go at that point. But pre-vaccine, those are things that we're telling our clients, like, hey, here's how we're going to deal with stuff. Here's how we're going to handle stuff. So it's definitely something thing. It's it's almost like it's at some point somebody needs to get together in the short term, sort of like say, here's the industry Bible on this.
Yeah.
I think it would sort of help everybody. So far, haven't seen anything. Doesn't mean it's not necessarily out there. But I think right now on our side, we're all sort of putting in as many common sense procedures in place in order to help deal with that.
I think there's a good. What do you think about the mix of technology? I don't know if people want to go full virtual. I don't know if people want to go full live. There's got to be personally, I like live conferences, and I
Who
also
doesn't?
like virtual, the thought of doing virtual stuff. It's so cool. So there's got to be
Yeah.
a happy medium there. There's got to be a little bit of both maybe in the future that we're going to see. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm actually to the first part. Yeah, yes. Well, the second part, yes, definitely. There's going to be a hybrid. We sort of get to that in a second. But I'm actually sort of glad you brought up the first part, because I would say to a lot of people that are listening to this, no matter what it is that you think, no matter what it is that you've seen already, go into. There's a lot of. Let me put it this way. There's a lot of clients that I've spoken to. That right from the get-go, they had negative feelings towards one way or the other towards virtual events. I'm not going to be able to do anything for my sponsors. Anybody who had sponsor-driven events or partnership events and stuff like that, it was instantaneous. Like I can't. Like it's sort of they made a decision based on what their experience with a virtual event is, and it was like a Zoom meeting, right? And it's like, how can I ever do any of this? How can I do anything with this? So I would say to a lot of people, like, before you make a hardcore decision on you're not going to do anything virtual, we're only set up for live. You'd be surprised what's out there for technology. Obviously, a lot of it's budget dependent, but you'd be surprised what's out there for technology. And there are right now 1 million people that are just dedicated to trying to figure out new things that we can do with virtual events. I've had conversations with clients where it's like they were sort of hell bent that they couldn't do anything because they're not going to be able to get their sponsor. There's no sponsorship money. They can't get their ROI back to their sponsors and stuff like that. And after we were done having a conversation, sort of going back to what we were talking about from like the exhibit side of things, it was like they went from being sort of negative about it to like, okay, I have this tool. Can we be able to integrate that? Can we do this? Okay, now I see where this is going, and blah 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 blah. So that's sort of it was a very predictable curve of this stuff, and like and how people were sort of viewing it, because right from the get go we were fighting against anybody that had sort of struggled with Zoom or WebEx or whatever, and then maybe saw some like hokey like virtual conference or something that looked like you were watching community television from the 80s, So part of it, the difficulty is, I think we had this conversation. It's like one of the hardest things to do is if you're a creative person, it's try to explain whatever vision is you have in your head and what you can do to somebody who's never seen it before. Mm-hmm. And there's so many things to do, and a lot of it is just dependent upon the position that the client is in and what they're trying to accomplish. That it's you got to have that conversation. So I would say to anybody who's like looking at doing virtual events right now, and a lot of people probably sort of figure this out, is have the conversations, have the due diligence. Don't go to don't necessarily just get stuck with your vendors that you've used. Look outside your sandbox, look outside your comfort zone and stuff like that to other people. And there's a bunch of companies out there right now doing like really cool, really, really fun stuff. I mean, it's not us. There's a bunch of people. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can do, and everybody has a different sort of creative approach to it. And now more than ever, the creative is really, really, really a big thing.
Right.
It's not just about being able to walk in and sort of just have some pipe and drape and throw up a thing and do your conference. Now you have to have a creative approach to your virtual meeting. Otherwise, people are just not going to watch. Mm-hmm. You have to have solutions. You have to have different approaches and ways to like solve these equations for people. Otherwise, it is going to be a 1980s community television broadcast, and it's gonna people are gonna be like, what the heck am I watching? And that's you always, for us, we want to produce something, we want to deliver something that makes people forget whatever it is that they're doing and pay attention to what it is that they're supposed to be paying attention to. Yeah. So we've done our job. If somebody says, wow, that was really, really cool. That was totally different. Look at the way they did this. That's great. And it wasn't, man, I got disconnected. Man, I got like this, like, look, the plants moved around in the background 6 times. You don't want people paying attention to that kind of stuff. You want all that sort of taken care of. You want it to flow. You want it to be fluid. You want people to enjoy the actual experience because, and you also want stuff in virtual environments. You want it to be as not complicated as possible. The more complicated it is, the higher degree of difficulty that somebody's going to sort of have. And there's lots of solutions out there for everybody. And you got to look around and do your due diligence with people that know what they're doing in order to find the right one. And everybody has different approaches.
Everything that you just said could also be said for trade shows,
live events,
exhibits. Keep them simple. Yeah. Keep them engaging. Everything that you just said about virtual could also be applied towards, I was telling you the story the other day about what we did with that Winning with Linen game.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, keep it engaging, keep people wanting to play, just have fun. There's too many times when you see exhibits with too many words, too many products, too many, you don't even know what you're looking at. And you've got about 7 seconds maybe as you're walking by to form an impression. We could do a whole nother show.
Well, no, I mean, that's a fair point. Before we talked about this briefly the other day, before this whole thing happened, right? Before we got, everybody sort of got locked in their cabins and stuff like that. The creative component to live events was really flourishing. More and more companies and whatnot were coming around to experiential, right?
Yeah.
So experiential was becoming really, really pervasive in not even becoming, it was pervasive in live events. However, one of the things that we noticed is we're our sister company, our partners in crime, so to speak, is 3D Exhibits. So we're witnessing this firsthand. Is that from the exhibit side of things, there was definitely right before this a change was afoot. That they were looking at things with clients, whatever, and they were pushing on it as well, and we're all sort of pushing on it. But the trade show booths for years have always sort of been, it's like the same concept. It's like here's booth, here's product, here's an engagement, right, whatever it is. But it's very much sort of like that same concept. It's like wash, rinse, and repeat in each booth. And one of the things that we were all sort of pushing on was, especially with the larger booths that have like larger footprints, is you have this real estate, turn it into a journey, like sort of look to Disney, right? It's like, we were talking about this the other day. It's like Disney's perfected this whole experience where, you're going on a ride and the ride is 2 minutes long, but you're in line for like an hour and a half, right? Longer. It depends. You're showing up at the park at 6 a.m. But what they perfected is making that whole experience part of the ride. And they've really gotten good at it, especially if you look at the new Star Wars thing, I forget the name, the ride. Part of the ride, part of the ride is sort of broken up into parts of the line. So you're sort of experiencing this sort of interwoven kind of thing. And I guess what I'm getting at is that these booths have such potential to be like these sort of immersive journeys to get people off balance, to get people engaged and talking, and get people off their phones and interacting in the space, even if it's not necessarily perfectly aligned with the product. But it's like once you set that mindset, now you can sort of engage people and have a conversation, and then weave that story into the actual product. And
to your point, just real quick, there's a lot of people watching this probably on LinkedIn that remember this. We were at a show last year, was it ASGMT? And we hired a caricature artist to sit in our booth and draw people's caricatures. And we thought that would be interesting and fun. Oh my gosh. there were so many people that came by the booth. You know, we don't have caricature artists don't have anything to do with oil and gas. But what it did was it made, and we should do a whole show about making a trade show booth sticky. But it got everybody to stop. They wanted to get their picture drawn, and then their friends were watching their friend get their picture drawn. And then what she did was she would print off the caricature, and then here's one right here. Trade show with this, you could see who got their. It was so awesome. And so like you said, you know, it doesn't have to necessarily align with your product, but if you can be creative and come up with something, it doesn't have to be super expensive either. It can just be some dumb idea like that. Oh, and by the way,
I mean, listen,
get Angie Jordan to do your caricatures because she does an awesome job. Okay, there's a plug for Angie. Okay, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say even some of the silliest thing. Another one is headshots. It's be so funny the amount of times I've seen people do headshots in booth. And there's like a sort of a line that goes around.
Yeah.
But I mean, even from a design standpoint, you know, some of the bigger companies and stuff that we worked with, it's like they've created whole booths now that are just like this, you know, a city of tomorrow or a spaceship or, you know, or something like that. Just so people, when they walk out, like even they're headed out of the convention center, like, man, you got to go see that booth at such and such company or whatever. And then people start, you know, going in to do it. But it's like now the structure, the visual structure of the booth is part of the actual story. Like you're building these like little mini theme parks and stuff like that in order to increase like engagement. Because it's just getting people. There's so many distractions now with people just like trying to do business and all that kind of stuff. And you want people to like sort of stop and like look up and go like, you know, wow, this, you know, to kind of take stock of their surroundings.
Yep, totally agree. Well, Nick, I really appreciate you stopping by. And is there anything I can get you? Can I get you some water or something? Or
no, food delivery.
Yeah.
I gotta go upstairs and figure out who showed up at my house.
Make sure your package is still there.
Yeah,
but,
right.
Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for the insight into the future of events. And if you want to, I highly suggest you reach out to Nick on LinkedIn. Go to linkedin.com/in/Nick Sdoucos. That's SDOUCOS. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the big challenge is spelling my name right. Yeah.
But you know, leave comments if you have any questions about what we talked about today. You can leave them in the comments down below. Nick, thanks for everything, and we'll see you guys later.
Absolutely, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.